began in this little old Quonset hut, WKAR-TV in East Lansing, Michigan.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the WKAR Community Impact Forum. I'm your host, Sean Turner. I'm General Manager here at WKAR. Whether you're joining us in person or tuning in online, we're so glad you're here with us tonight. We're here tonight because public media matters. It educates, it connects, and at WKAR, we're proud to be part of the mission every single day. But we're also here because, like public media, situations across the country, we're facing growing challenges. As you may know, President Trump on May 1st signed an executive order attempting to end federal funding for PBS and NPR. Now, whether that order stands or whether what it means for local stations is still unclear. But what is clear is that any removal of federal funding will have an impact on the services we provide. So, tonight is not about defending our existence. It's about understanding public media. It's about understanding what we do. We know that everyone has their own WKAR story. Maybe it's the classical music on during the day when you're at work. Maybe it's PBS Kids on in the living room. Maybe it's a documentary that stuck with you. But what may not be clear is all that we do here at WKAR and for our community, and how much we rely on all of you in the community to keep that going. So this evening is all about pulling back the curtain. It's about showing you who we are, what we do, and why this matters. So you're going to hear from some members of my leadership team tonight, the people who work on the ground every day, and from members of the community who've been impacted by some of the work that we do. We also want to hear from all of you. So as Ashley said, please scan the QR code, ask us your questions. You can also put those in the chat if you're online, but please engage with us as we move through the evening. Most important is that tonight you're going to leave here with real tools to get involved. You're going to leave here with information about how to spread the word, ideas, actions that you can take, and everything that you need to be able to help public media in your neighborhood and beyond. We're doing this because public media belongs to all of us. And when we work together here at WKAR, we know that we can keep it strong. So we're going to get started.
Public media has a mission. It's independent. It's accessible. It's for everyone. Across the country, more than 98% of people are connected to free TV, radio, and digital programming and services through public media.
WKAR is public media in your backyard. It's local. From news to emergency alerts, WKAR delivers critical information to your neighborhood. Did you know? WKAR-FM is the primary emergency alert system station for the state of Michigan.
In music and the arts, WKAR uncovers the local gems and dives deeper into the stories that connect you to the musicians and artists.
The music that we choose to love says a lot about our values. It reflects our values.
Did you know WKAR hosts over 50 hours of curated music featuring classical, jazz, folk, and more every week?
From science and nature to public affairs, and even a bit of drama, WKAR Public Media connects you with the world, taking you on a journey from the comfort of your own home.
Up, up, and away!
Did you know WKAR is your source for PBS and PBS Kids in Mid-Michigan?
And WKAR is your neighbor, joining in local festivities, keeping education fun in Mid-Michigan communities. Did you know WKAR partners with more than 130 organizations and schools across 29 counties to provide over 10,000 reading kits to children each year?
WKAR is an essential resource that informs, educates, and inspires. And we're here for you every day. Public media is for everyone.
For everyone.
For everyone.
Everyone.
Public media is for everyone. WKAR is for you.
All right, so we're going to get started tonight. First, I'd like to welcome WKAR's senior leadership team to discuss a little about who we are and what we do. So joining me up front is Brant Wells, Senior Director for Station Operations here at WKAR. Ashley Smith, Senior Director for Content and Education, and Mel McGuire, Senior Director for Development and Communication. So welcome. Ashley, we're going to get started with you tonight. I think it'd be great for you to just take a moment to paint a picture of how public broadcasting works for everyone here tonight.
Sure, absolutely. So to start with that, I'm going to take us back to the 60s, 1967, the Public Broadcasting Act. I think it's important to start there because it gives you an idea of how we became established and what we were established to do. So when this was established, it created the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And there are a couple things that they put in this act that I think really drive home why we're here as stations. You can see some of them here. So first, foremost, education. We're meant to be instructional, educational, and cultural. Second, and I think this is really important, we're meant to address the needs of unserved and underserved people in our communities. I think that's really key because that's a place where public media is different because we're addressing gaps that aren't found in your other media and your commercial media. And finally, in this last one here, you can see it's solving local problems and expressing national concerns. So it's a local-national partnership, which I think is very key. And I think it's important to note that all of the stations within the system are independently owned and operated. That's how we're different from other media networks and entities. When you think about ABC and CBS and NBC, they are affiliates of a larger national entity. So they pretty much do what the big boss says. Here, PBS and NPR really are supposed to listen to us. You know, we're independently owned and operated, and we can make our voices heard in our local communities and serve our local communities how we want to be served. So I think we have a map we can also show you here to give you an idea of the scale, the vastness of this network. So there are over 1,500 public media stations across the U.S. This is just the PBS member stations, but there are way more that are also NPR. So this is a very vast, broad system that is unmatched anywhere else in the United States and really touches communities that aren't touched by others.
Yeah, the education piece is so important. I spoke with a parent of young kids recently, and she was saying that there's so many places that are not safe for her children to go online, but when she wants them to be safe, she sends them to PBS because she knows they'll be taken care of there. Thank you, Ashley. Brant, I want to go to you because people think of us as PBS and NPR, and you think of all the work that we do, but we also play a very vital role in regards to innovation and security. So can you talk a little bit about how WKAR and public media in general helps with innovation and security?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to emergency alerting, right, it's about getting critical information to the masses. And so as a station here, we provide, I mean, you already heard it in the video, right? We're the primary EES station for the state. And so if you think back, what was it, like 2 months ago, we had the tornadoes that were just over in Williamston area, right? We're sending out those alerts to the community. And that's just one example. On the PBS side, we're part of the WARN network, which what that means is we're the backup when FEMA needs to send out any kind of national, local, regional alerts, right? It typically goes directly to mobile carriers. But if you think about cell phone networks and so forth, right, it's not as robust or as... It makes me worry because it can get overloaded, right? So we are the backup to get out those wireless emergency alerts. So all those alerts that you see on your phones, which again, severe weather, Amber alerts. You look at, you know, what happened more recently with Hurricane Helene down in Blue Ridge, and Blue Ridge radio network down there was the only source of emergency information for that community.
Yeah, the public media station.
Yeah, all of the infrastructure in that area was wiped out. And yet through the radio network there, they were able to get out all that critical information. And just thinking back to the past year in 2024, do you have any idea how many wireless emergency alerts went through the WARN system with public media?
I didn't know there would be a quiz.
There is. I mean, we could almost play Price is Right rules here. Yeah. 11,000.
Wow.
And if you think about that, just one alert, if that saves one life, isn't it worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Brant. Mel, I want to talk about fundraising, but before we do, WGBH did a great short video to sort of demonstrate how fundraising works. So let's take a look at that, and then we'll dive in on fundraising.
Ever wonder how shows like Arthur or Antiques Roadshow get made? Well, you have to go back to the 1960s when the FCC chairman proclaimed television to be a vast wasteland. In response, Congress created a place where the American people could access quality educational programs. Think of it like the national parks. They wanted to create a space where any American, no matter their means or status, could pause to learn, grow, and admire the splendor of our world. So, in 1967, a bipartisan group of lawmakers created the Public Broadcasting Act, and with it, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB for short. The CPB was developed as a public corporation, not a government agency, in order to insulate it from the winds of political change. But how does the whole system work? Well, it all starts and ends with you. Your taxes fund the CPB, about $1.60 per person per year. That's less than a cup of coffee and certainly less than a carton of eggs. The CPB takes your $1.60 and allocates it across America to your local stations. Stations use this money to pay dues to PBS so they can air programs like Arthur and Antiques Roadshow. It's kind of like being in one big broadcasting club. But who creates the programs? Well, PBS gives some of the funds to larger stations like GBH, who create shows with part of your $1.60, but also with funds from other foundations, sponsors, and of course, viewers like you. All stations are interdependent. The CPB funding is the glue that binds the public media system together. Remember when you traveled the world with Carmen Sandiego, learned to love books with Reading Rainbow, or measured twice and cut once on This Old House? Maybe you still remember a fun science fact from a Nova documentary, or you had a recent revelation when you watched Frontline. All of these programs exist so that you can explore and understand the larger world. Whether it's reporting on ferry delays in Washington State, farming in the Midwest, or fishing season on the East Coast, America is full of different, wonderful places where each local station adapts to the specific needs of their communities. So what makes public media special? Well, it's made by and for you. But without the CPB funding, the system is at risk. Smaller member stations will close, news deserts will get worse, and producing stations like GBH might be unable to make your favorite shows.
So, Mel, with that, I mean, there's a lot of information there, but can you bring that home for us and talk a little about how WKAR is funded and why donations, advocacy, partnerships, why those are so important to the work we do here?
Thought you'd never ask. A lot of you get emails from me. Hi, welcome. I was thinking a little bit about this conversation, and yes, we do get support through CPB grants, but it's the private support that really helps us to take those dollars and really leverage. And when we think about talking one-on-one or thinking about communities that, like ours, that need more, those community grants can be leveraged by your support. So we have a lot of things that people know us for, but most people know us for our original content. So I think about the big three: original content, things that reflect our community, education, because that is that's a bipartisan, and that's important. And then student experiential learning. We want to make sure that we are teaching the next generation about what it means to be in public media and service through media. So your private support goes to that and helps us leverage what we get from CPB.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Mel. So, Ashley, I want to go back to you just briefly here and ask you, all across the country, news has been on the decline. And that's one of the things that we do here. It's part and parcel to what NPR exists for. So can you talk about the importance of news and a little bit about how we approach that here at WKAR?
Yeah, I think I saw a statistic today that said there are 55 million people across the U.S. that have no access or limited access to local news and information, which is scary because studies have shown when there are news deserts and you're not getting access to local information, there's more corruption in local government. There's less folks who turn out to vote, so less people's voices are heard. So I think it's really key, and public media is a place that can step in and take that on. I mean, you saw that map. We're in every community across the country, so we have the best network to set us up. And here at WKAR, we've got a long history of providing news and information to this community. So we have our national programming like Morning Edition and All Things Considered, but when you listen to it, you hear our local stories. And I think what's different about public media is that we're not sensationalizing. We're not here for the latest crime that happened, but if it is the latest crime, it's about what happened to the people. Where do we go after this? How do we recover from this? And we also have the unique opportunity to go deeper than your traditional news sources when it comes to local news and information. So what's really important to us and what studies have shown people want from their news, which we'd love to hear from you if you agree with this, is they want that personal connection. They want follow-up and that kind of feedback loop.
I want to just extend that a little, Ashley. There's been a lot of talk about NPR and people's perception of NPR. But we talk about how every public media station is unique, and you mentioned local news. So can you just talk a little about how WKAR is not like WCMU, is not like WGBH, and why that matters at the local level?
Absolutely. I mean, when you go over to WCMU or WGVU, they're not reporting on our local school boards. They're not reporting on what's happening here that will affect you all who live in these communities directly. And they're not showcasing your specific voices, but we are. And it's really important. I would say also, when you think about, you just mentioned GBH, for example. GBH is a huge entity in Boston. It is a public media station, but it's massive. There are, other pockets in Boston that they cover. What's unique about Michigan specifically is that when you're doing a big Boston-based organization, they're not reporting about the little communities that make up the rest of the state. Most of what comes out of bigger entities is that city. So with Michigan, we have 6 public media stations in Michigan, and they're able to uniquely target each community throughout the state. And I think that's what makes our partnership really special.
Yeah, Ashley and I have talked a lot about how when we travel, one of the things that we always do is the first thing we do when we get to the hotel is we turn on a local public media station. And we oftentimes, if I go to California, if I'm in San Francisco, I'll turn on public media, and I will see content on that station that I wouldn't run here in Mid-Michigan because it's not what matters to our community. And that's what I really think people need to understand, is that what we show, what we do is a reflection of our community. Brant, let me go to you. Can you talk a little bit about how people can access WKAR's services and why that accessibility is unique to public media?
Public media is the leader in accessibility, and being accessible for the communities free. That's, what it comes down to. If you look at the media landscape across the board, everything is, every single streaming service is raising rates and so forth and things like that, but we're free and accessible to everyone. Whether it be over the air through wireless, just an antenna, and you can get 5 different unique channels on the TV side, or on the radio, right? We have 3 different stations, technically speaking. And even then, we have the WKR Listen app, where you can listen to additional audio streams that we provide, like 24/7 classical, jazz, etc., news talk. So we're trying to be everywhere in a meaningful manner. But one of the things that I want to talk about, and you mentioned innovation earlier, and I didn't get to talk about this when it comes to accessibility, is public media. When I say is the leader, if you think back to where did closed captioning or open captioning result from? It's from public media. Do you know what show was actually the first show that really experiment with captioning?
Why do you have so many quizzes?
I know, because I love trivia, right? It's a little show called The French Chef with Julie Shaw. Was one of the very first to use captioning. And we talk about accessibility. Public media is here to drive what is not profitable at the same rate, right? We're not worried about a bottom line when it comes to, we got to do this because it's making money. We do it because it's right and it's for the community. And that's the important aspect to why we exist and why we do what we do.
Well, I told you this would go fast. This is the fastest meeting I've ever had with the 3 of them. But we've got to move on because we have some other panels. Ashley, Brant, Mel, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and move to our next panel. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.
This internship has definitely changed and broadened my perspective as to what I can do.
My time here at WKR has been invaluable.
I feel as though I've really grown into my identity and my career.
I definitely have more of an appreciation and an idea as to the processes which go into broadcasting.
And I feel at WKR that I can approach a challenge and not be scared, but learn through the challenge.
I feel like I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't feel like I had any experience. I feel like I was going in blind after graduation. But my time here is helping me find a passion in media and public media. I feel like I'm a different person than when I started.
All right. I'm joined now by some of the people who make the great work that we do here at WKR possible. Please help me welcome to the stage Bobby Taylor. Bobby Taylor is in charge of our experiential learning program. He's our coordinator and video production technician here at WKR. Robin Pizzo is our director of education. And Jamie Paisley is, of course, our director of radio programming. So welcome. I've really been looking forward to this discussion because I love the discussion about where the rubber meets the road. So, Bobby, in that video we just saw, we saw some of our outstanding student interns here at WKR. We have this great student experiential learning program that you're in charge of. Can you tell us a little about that program and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that video was completely made by students without any real guidance from us other than look at our mission statement. What do you think about WKAR? And they ran with that entirely on their own, interviewed staff, students, and created those videos that you'll see throughout the rest of the day, too. The experiential learning program is kind of a reworking of how we want to approach how we work with students. Us being on Michigan State's campus, we've always had interns and students that worked at WKAR. I myself was a student, and I know many of the full-time staff here were also students. But we really wanted to kind of change how the experience was for students after they left WKAR. So not only giving them the tools to work towards what kind of career choices and kind of concentration studies that they're working towards in their classrooms and towards in their majors, but also towards a better understanding of what their contributions mean to working at a public media station. So they very similarly do the same work that a lot of full-time staff do, on-call staff, but then they also get the opportunity to learn what those other areas do to contribute to what they're contributing to. So it's kind of a nice cyclical nature of, you help start production or content from the start, and then you can kind of see, well, here's that community that you're actually making that video for by going to an event and being forward-facing and such. So we really tried to rework our internship experience so they can kind of get the same feeling that we all get about being here and working at WKAR.
Yeah, and I know many of them really love the program. Robin, you've spent your entire career educating and facilitating education, and so you've had an opportunity to work with many of these students. So when you see what this program does for students here at WKAR, what's your impression? Why do you think this program is so important?
It's just an invaluable program, not only for our students, but our community and our staff. When we work with our students, they offer tremendous support to all of our education efforts, everything from preparing materials, connecting with the community, keeping us inspired with new ideas that are innovative and technology-driven. They come from, of course, a different generation from me, but they help us connect to the community. And because of that, we recognize that we play a role in their lives to connect to their future. They're inspired by the work that they do here, and it often leads them to what they plan to do beyond this place. And that's a really powerful aspect of the experiential learning program.
Yeah, well, I want to stay with you, Robin, because, when you talk about powerful impact, I want to talk about some of your work in the community. You've been here at WKA for quite some time, and I am just always in awe at what our education team, our small but mighty education team does. So why don't you take just a minute to tell us a little bit about what you and your team does to support education in this community?
Yeah, so we recognize that education throughout all communities is critical for all students. All children need the very best chance at a successful future. And that only occurs with quality educational supports. We know our public school systems or any school system can't do it alone. And so we help come alongside our parents and our educators and our caregivers to help bridge some of the gaps that maybe our children are experiencing in various ways and in a variety of ways. And we provide high quality learning opportunities for families and for children in a lot of different places. When we talk about our student interns, last year we did over 50 community engagements, and there would be no way we could possibly do that without our student interns supporting us. We also have provided over 11,500 reading kits to over 130 organizations in 30 counties across mid-Michigan. And this year is a really wonderful milestone for our education team because everywhere we go, we provide books free of choice to all of the littles that come to all of our tables. Everywhere we go, even when we have PBS Kids Day here. And this year marks 100,000 books in the hands of children throughout mid-Michigan that our education team, small but mighty, has provided.
Yeah, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you, Robin. Jamie, before we talk about music, I want to ask you, Bob, because your journey has been really interesting. You started here at WKAR as an intern, and you're still here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk a little about what your experience was, because you have a skill set where you could go anywhere and do anything, but you're still here doing this work.
Yeah, if you would have told me when I first started here as an intern that I'd be here talking in front of all of you about student experiential learning programs and such, and also just about the value of this place, I wouldn't have believed you. So it's pretty funny. So I came here as a student, like many do. I was looking for an internship, looking for some experience to kind of help me in my field and wanting to work in media. And when I first started working here, it took me a little bit to catch on to like, oh, I'm showing up for a shift. I'm going to work camera here. Well, where is this going? Where is this video going? Who's watching this? Why am I making this? And after, so I started in 2015 and I graduated in 2016. And I pretty much had to be like pried away from the building at that point. So I wanted to stay here. I worked here, and then I also worked part-time at Detroit Public Television, kind of back in between both of them. And then before I knew it, I was advocating for this place more than I even thought I was, being at events, getting coverage, talking to people at those kinds of events. And then now for me to be full circle, kind of helping students do the same thing, it's pretty awesome. And I think that my goal, and I think our goal collectively with this program, is to really help students get that same feeling that I got when I was a student. I know that not everyone will have that. That's a fever dream. It's pretend, it's make believe. But at the same time, us putting that effort forward and making sure that they get the experience to where they can see, oh, this does go further than just you're creating something. You're not just making a video and putting it on YouTube to see how many views you get. You're making a video and then going out to that community event and seeing who you made that video for, why it impacts them, and how that can reach further than any view count can.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I often am reminded that my predecessor, Susie Elkins, started here as an intern too, and she was here for 27 years until she rose up to become the general manager. So, you want to trade seats here?
I'm all right.
I tell him that all the time. I tell him that.
So, Jamie, I've been, thinking about the fact that, there are probably a lot of classical music listeners here. Classical music is one of the things that we do very well here at WKAR. So I wanted to ask you, at a time when people can get access to music anywhere, help us understand a little about why classical music here at WKAR is unique and why that experience is something that this community still values.
Sure. A lot of that comes from what the data is saying. And I admit I am not a graduate of MSU, but I did come here about 10 years ago from Los Angeles. And at the time, I was both programming music in the classical station in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And the research that was going on there, because classical music, I don't know if you know, it has a bit of a stereotype. But what is happening with what the internet has done to music, it has made what was first being called the musical omnivore, where people would just listen to whatever they really liked, but it's kind of morphed into something called post-genre. So it's how do we reach those people, especially those just getting introduced to the internet, to the realization that classical music can be part of the entire melting pot of music that they have available to them. So what we have done, and I've brought from that, is to make it more focused on what is happening in the community. To different organizations. We partnered with folks all across the state. And I don't mean just our listening area. We now have partnerships up in Traverse City, in Saginaw Bay, for programs like Great Lakes Concerts, because it's Michigan-made music that we want to spread to everybody. And it's just talent. You may have read a couple of months ago in the City Pulse, we have a wealth of local regional orchestras here in Michigan, which is not the case in a whole lot of places. And so we're trying to just mine that, because the awareness of that talent and the open ears that people have as they accumulate, I think, is a good thing that we try to bring to people.
I was speaking with someone recently who was a WKR listener, loves classical music, and I said, well, where do you listen? And she said, I don't listen to WKR, but classical music is available in other places. And she said, I listen to WKR because I'm not just listening to classical music, I'm actually getting an experience. And I don't know if Jody, so she feels like she knows Jody personally. She says, I've never met him, but I feel like he's my friend, and it's that experience that people really connect with. Jamie, let me stick with you, and just as we wrap up here, can you just talk to us a little bit about why you're in public media?
I mean, it's the right thing, I think, to do what Brant said. It's a way to serve the community that has kind of raised me up to be part of it, and to introduce things that I know about that other people should know, or more importantly, to put my ear, just like with the music, keeping an open ear to see what's happening in the community and to spread that to other folks, because that's just an important thing to do, to be a good citizen.
All right. On that note, we're going to have to move to our next panel. I told you, it's going to move fast. Please, Bobby, Robin, Jamie, please help me give them a round of applause here.
WKR is important to me because of its value of education. Education is the foundation of our society, and helping our young kids who grow up to are those who are going to actually be in charge, who are going to be making the rules and the laws, and who are we helping sustain our country and all of our economies.
I've loved working with schools and families, giving them educational resources and making sure that there's not a barrier based on any sort of financial differences.
At WKR is I can help build and create activities so they can start practicing it earlier, and then say, oh, I actually do want to be an engineer by the time I get to middle school or in high school, and continue with it in college. Or, you know what, doctor doesn't seem that far out of reach because I understand math and I can do this.
I've been doing this for 39 years. We know when we go out in the community, we hear from listeners who say, you make a difference in my life by being there. And how many jobs do you get to hear that?
WKAR is a huge family.
It's like family.
I know that seems cliche, but we all take care of each other.
We're all working for the same goal of producing and providing something that's a benefit to the community.
And because of that, our creative process is boosted.
Being able to come to work every day and know that the work that I'm doing is supporting a larger mission is what keeps me going. It makes me excited to come to work every day.
All right, so joining me up front now are some familiar faces from the video we just watched. Ken Murley is WKAR's Broadcast Engineering Manager. Al Martin, next to Ken, is a host and producer of Beyond the Score. And of course, we have Jamie Paisley, who is joining us again because we were so happy with him last time around. All right. Al, I'm going to start with you. We talked about classical music. We talked about educational programming. We talked about events. But what a lot of people may not know is it doesn't stop there. We actually do sports too here at WKAR. So can you talk a little bit about your work at sports here at WKAR and sort of how that's developed over the years?
Definitely, Sean. I always get a kick out of that because, again, sports and public media, that isn't the norm. So, when it comes to WKAR, we've been here over 100 years, and our sports coverage actually goes all the way back to 1920 when we were actually broadcasting Michigan State football games. So I stand on the shoulders of guys like Jim Adams, Earl Robinson, Terry Braverman. And you guys know those names out there? Yep, right. They were my predecessors and kind of opened the door for me. And, my path is kind of unique coming here to WKAR because I actually worked for a commercial station before I was plucked into, I know, sacrilegious, right? Before I was plucked to come over here at WKAR. I know, I'm here now though, right? And I've been here now over 10 years. And I bring that up just because, I look at that experience when I was working in commercial television and coming over here. I mean, working in commercial TV, look, I'm waking up at like 10 a.m., going out, getting my assignment, and I'm turning a full package in a matter of like 5 to 6 hours, right, for the 6 and 11 o'clock news. Where here at WKAR, I can really take my time and tell the story, really get to know the subjects that I'm interviewing. And what I love about sports, Sean, and I'm sure many of you out there enjoy, is that sports are really a window into society, right? So with Beyond the Score, I'm so blessed that I get a chance to highlight topics that have this overlap into real world issues and discussions that we need to be having. And I also love sports because it brings us all together, right?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Al, you were the host of Current Sports for many years. And at some point when it was time to sort of transition, that we transitioned to Beyond the Score. Can you just say a little more about Beyond the Score and sort of what that transition has meant for you, what the show's about?
Definitely. And I want to thank you, Sean, because Beyond the Score had been an idea that I had in my brain for a long time. I hosted Current Sports radio and TV, on the radio for 10 straight years, and live radio on WKAR AM 870 and 90.5 FM, and then Current Sports TV for 7 years. And I'd always wanted to do a show that mimicked kind of like, 60 Minutes, or I had been a big fan of Real Sports at Bryant Gumbel for a long time, where you really got a chance to know who these coaches, who these GMs, who the players are, of course, on a human level. And I always thought, man, wouldn't that be cool to bring that to a local sporting feel, right? The people here in East Lansing and the greater Lansing area, getting to know these athletes on a more personal human level. So when you came to me, Sean, and you said, "Hey, Al, you want to do this thing?" I said, "Oh, heck yeah, finally." And I'll dive more into, a couple of the stories that we've gotten a chance to cover, but I can honestly say that working on Beyond the Score has been the highlight of my career, and I've gotten the chance to know some individuals in the sports world that have really made an impact on my own personal life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Al. So, Ken, I want to go to you. In every organization, there are those people where you can look at them and say, "Hey, what happened on August 3rd, 1987 at 6 o'clock?" And, you're getting to be that guy.
1987.
But you have been here at WKAR for a very long time, and you had a lot of different roles here. And through those different roles, you stuck with the mission here at WKAR. So talk to us a little about why that's the case and why this became your career.
Yeah. So, I started in as a student, just like Bobby did. And, it's a different kind of feel than what I thought I was going to really walk into. I had worked at public access, which is what we aren't, but we get that. So I had started there when I was in high school, and I had like some preconceived notion of what I thought public TV was. Well, public TV is not that. And so when I started here, you walk in and you're immediately absorbed into this family where everybody is here to help, especially as the students, but even as coworkers, they're all here to help build up the product. Like I said in that video, it helps us, our creativity, be the strongest we can think of because we're all there with the same mission, with the same end goal, and working together with each other, helping our students learn, helping each other learn to make an amazing product. And that is the reason I stayed. I forego all my plans that I was planning on doing after college, and I was like, this is where I want to be. This is the type of service I want to provide to my community, and I live in the community so that we can all enjoy the spectacular of WKAR together.
Yeah. I think I want to go a little different direction and ask all of you. Since you all have different experiences here, Jamie, what's your favorite memory of working here at WKAR?
It's just as kind of Jody alluded to in that video that you saw, when the members of the public come up to you and say, I absolutely loved so-and-so moment. Because for me, it feels like there are so many facts and jumbled up in the Rolodex of my mind that I don't know what is actually coming out of my mouth when I'm on the air. And then it happens, and then people say
to tell them that.
Well, but I love it too because it helps it keep the conversation. When you're listening to us, you're part of the conversation. That I'm bringing you, little tidbits and trivia, but it's supposed to make you part of it. That's as Jody said, that people like that companionship that we've provided for over 100 years at this point, and that's part of it. So when people come to me and say, you played that, I know it was just a couple of days ago, you played that Star Wars music and my kid immediately grabbed their lightsaber and danced around the living room. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I love it. So Ken, let me ask you, what was it? Quizbusters, the auction? What was it? What was your favorite moment here?
Yes, the yearly WKAR auction was a learning experience, I tell you. 8 straight days, 9 hours of live television a day. You're real good at making live TV after that. I loved Quizbusters. I loved directing Quizbusters in its final seasons. That was a blast. But I think probably my biggest memory was when COVID hit and we had to figure out how to make TV without being here. And whereas other people just threw their hands in the air and said, well, what do you want us to do? We figured it out. And that was an amazing moment for me because that was a big part of my role back then, was to figure out how we use things like Zoom and Skype, long live Skype, to keep making TV and to give the community information. One of your first shows hosting here was Answers and Insights, which was a 30-minute show that we did trying to teach our community about what's going on with COVID right now. And we did Curious Crew over Zoom. I mean, that is probably, when I look back at my 26 years of being here, I say, wow, like we tried our hardest to not let anybody down during that time when a lot of people just went, I can't really help you. We said, no, we're going to keep doing it. That's our mission. We're here to help our people out.
Yeah. I went to... Yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget going to Susie Elkins and saying, if there's anything I can do to help, then, I'd be happy to do that. A week later, I was on a show and I just thought, why, what is wrong with me? Al, how about you? You've been here for a while. What moment stands out in your mind?
Sean, when I read that question this morning and I knew you were going to ask that to us, I said, you know
got
what?
The questions?
I got the questions. I got the questions ahead of time, Ken. But I said, you know what? When I sit down and Sean throws it at me, I'm just going to just wing it, right? And I'm kind of doing that now.
We can't tell.
Right, you can tell, right? So I'm glad that you went to Jamie. But I will say this. I will say this. I've gotten a chance to cover some pretty cool stuff during my time here at WKAR, from Final Fours to going to the Rose Bowl and putting together a special for that. Covering Tom Izzo on the Daily is also a really cool experience, and getting to know him over the years. But I want to go more recently, and this kind of goes back to my earlier point about how Beyond the Score has affected me personally. Probably the toughest story I've ever had to cover and the most gratifying story I've ever had to cover comes in season 1 of Beyond the Score, where I sat down with Terry Hesbrook, who was the longtime head coach of the Ithaca Yellow Jackets high school football team. Terry and I had grown close over the years during my time in commercial television and then my early years here at WKAR. And I recently had found out that, unfortunately, his son, who started off as a water boy for the team, got a scholarship to go play football at Wayne State University in Detroit, and was on a great track. Smart kid. I got a chance to know Brady over the years. I found out that Brady had taken his own life. So I reached out to Terry after some time and said, hey, man, I think that your story would do so much good for our community, because I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there who are going through what you're going through. And Terry said, you know what, Al, you're so right. Let's do it. And I remember going over there and interviewing Terry and him and his wife, Christy, telling their story. And, as journalists, we're supposed to be removed, right? But we're also human. And I remember doing that interview when we get all the B-roll, and I'm chatting with Terry and Christy afterwards, and it was very emotional, as you can imagine. My crew doesn't know this, but as they're packing up and getting ready to head back to WKAR, just something told me to go back inside and just thank Christy and Terry. And I walk in, and they're really emotional, and Terry just came over and hugged me. And we had a moment, and I just prayed with them. And then, I hugged them both and then left. And since that day, I haven't taken off this wristband. That's why I was looking at this wristband as you asked that question. It says B#4, and this is the Brady Hesbrook Foundation. Brady, and then he wore the number 4, and this foundation is aimed towards impacting the youth and trying to stymie suicide prevention, right? And that's the kind of story that really stands out to me.
Yeah,
no question
that
about
connection. All right. Thank you for that, Al. All right. With that, we're going to have to move to our final panel for this evening. So please join me in giving these folks a round of applause.
WKR's mission is important because they are listening to the communities themselves and giving the community the mic.
WKAR works really hard to include diverse voices, to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table, and to just share stories that help build our cultural background.
I am more in tune with social issues because it is something that we address.
We can do anything from a concert in Studio A to a documentary about the Flint water crisis.
Here at WKAR, there's this unique sense of gratification that you get from doing work in the community and creating content that represents your community and serving your community, that once I kind of got bit by that bug, I was kind of stuck with it.
All right, so some of the most impactful work we do at WKAR involves partners in our community. So I am thrilled tonight to be joined by some of those partners. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how working with WKAR and the connection they have to public media has had an impact on them and their work. So joining me on stage is Carolyn Bloodworth, a longtime supporter and partner and current volunteer of the Radio Reading Service. Julie Thomasma is president and CEO of Child and Family Charities. And Michaela Dua, I'm sorry, I messed that up. Balzer is Director of Innovation and Learning at Impression 5 Science Center. My apologies. All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So I think I'd just like to start with just a general question about how you have worked with WKAR and what your impressions have been and your opportunities to engage with us. So you might start us off. That'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. So Child and Family Charities, much like WKAR, has been in the community for a very long time, since 1911. So deep roots in this community. And so we've had the opportunity to partner with WKAR for quite a long time now. We've had so many different opportunities between the PBS Kid Days, between the reading opportunities and all the books that you've given us. And then most recently, we partner with you on creating an amazing community space and really bringing WKAR to the community in our new campus, which is located at the former McLaren Greenlawn campus. So we were able to repurpose that and then partner with WKAR and bring a really wonderful space there. So can't wait to talk about that a little bit more.
Absolutely. So Caroline, can you talk a little bit about your work with the Radio Reading Service and how that has impacted you over the years?
Well, certainly. I'm a longtime lover of WKAR. I worked for Consumers Energy for 42 years and managed their philanthropy for over 30. And I met my friends here at WKAR way back in the early 90s. So I remember many of the people. Beanie Tomber was one of my first contacts. Steve Moucher introduced me to HGTV. Saw it right in the other room, right there, and thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be exciting. But through the years working with WKAR, got to know the staff here and got to know people on a very personal level. And they got to know me and my story. And I had mentioned one day that my mother had macular degeneration. She was a journalist by trade, ran a newspaper with my father for 40 years, and she could no longer read the many newspapers she had coming to her town. Next thing I know, a radio reading device was delivered to my office to take to my mother. And it brought her life back. It restored so much joy to her life, to listen to the newspaper, to everything that was read. And that was a lifeline for us, and it meant the world. So when I retired about a year and a half ago, I said, I can be a volunteer reader. So they let me. And so I am a volunteer reader because I want to give back in a way that WKAR was able to give back to my family.
We are so appreciative of your work as a volunteer reader. Thank you. Michaela, can you talk to us a little bit about why the relationship between Impression 5 and WKAR works so well?
Yes, thank you for having us. Thank you for having me and us here together to talk a little bit about this. But Impression 5 Science Center in our community thrives in connecting families to exciting learning, experiential learning. And WKR does the same thing. It really connects to families. It comes into their homes and really, brings opportunities for them to engage in different types of content, whether it's science or many other deep, rich content. And so for us, it's a natural partnership. Anytime, WKR reaches out to Impression 5 or Impression 5 reaches out to WKR, one of perfect example of things that we've done together in the past is they've put little clips of interstitials together for us to present to our kids in our programs. So if we're going to be doing a lesson on air and how it moves, they might be able to put some content that's already created, whether it's Curious George. And so we might start that lesson with a great clip that kids are familiar with, and then we move into our hands-on learning. So there's a natural partnership in learning and also really connecting with kids with things that they're already very familiar with. And so that's really important.
Yeah. And if you have not been to Impression 5, it's such an amazing place. It's a really, really cool place. Julie, I was really so thrilled to have this opportunity to work with you and the organization to put a WKAR space in your space. So let's talk a little about that and how that came together and what you think it'll mean for the families that you serve.
Yeah, so we've been working on this new campus plan for quite a long time and had awesome conversations with your team over those couple years we've been planning, and created a space that was colorful, interactive, and it's just coming alive. We just moved in a couple weeks ago, and so we're just getting things going right now, but we're really excited to be bringing that programming right into our lobbies and right into a special designated room that's just WKAR. Just outfitted with all of your technology and interactive things. And then also we have our Youth Drop-In Center that will be opening up this summer. So we're excited to bring programming there as well.
Yeah, and this was a great opportunity for WKAR because we had been looking for partners in the community where we could not only get out of our own building and go beyond just showing up at events, but we were looking for partners who would be good with WKAR being in their space so that we can show people the educational resources that we have. And you all were great in saying, hey, let's work together. And it's important to note that this is a model. We're going to be looking to do more of this throughout the community at places where we know that families and children gather. So I wanted to ask you all more just sort of a personal question about your connection to public media. I often, when people ask me my public media story, I often tell people about how growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, public media was my window to the world. And everyone has a different story. So let's talk a little about that. Carolyn, can you start us off with just a little bit about your window or your public media experience?
Well, my experience right now, I'm caring for a brand new granddaughter in retirement, and we're watching a lot of public media. That helps when it's time to wind down. But I think about my time with Consumers Energy, and I think about my experience here at WKAR. Over 30 years, developing relationships here with the station. When I first walked in the door with Beanie here, we were talking about underwriting the TV program Nature. And over time, that grew because we recognized that WKAR offered local programming. And so you mentioned Quizbusters. That's near and dear to my heart. So we started underwriting Quizbusters, I think, almost from the very beginning to the very end. I remember being here on that last taping. I remember Ken well. I remember you well. But also, we engaged our employees in the auction. It was not necessarily fun for the staff, but it was a great way to engage the community. And boy, I remember as an auctioneer learning about Lansing area businesses that I didn't know because I'm from Jackson. But just all of the things that we were able to do that were local. And for us at Consumers, WKAR offered an opportunity to support programming that also went statewide because the company's statewide. So I think about all the things that WKAR did for me professionally, and then also personally, it couldn't have been a better match.
Thank you. Michaela, do you have a WKAR or a public media story?
I do. I don't think you could live in this community without having one, to be honest with you. So mine is definitely personal in the sense that when I have a son, he was into science from the very, very small age. And one day I came home and he was doing an experiment in the sink. And it was from the Science Minute. And he was just like trying to replicate this experiment. And then I was like, well, we got to go to school. We got to go pack these things up. We have to go to kindergarten roundup. And we went to our local school, and guess who the principal was? It was the Science Minute. So Robert Stevenson was our principal.
Oh, wow.
And so he
Dr.
was
Rob.
like celebrity out. He was just like, oh my goodness, Science Minute is my principal. And I really think about like that connection, right? He was home, he was doing these experiments, he was really connected to science, he went to school, he saw somebody again. And so when we talk about public media really being local, it's so true, right? Not only are they in our living room, but they're our neighbors, they're our friends, there are people that we're connected to. And so that just makes it all more meaningful to us, or to me, to know that there are these stories that are being curated about people that I deeply care about. And so Jack will never forget that moment where he saw Mr. Stevenson as his principal, and he thought it was the coolest thing. And he continues to engage in science. And I really attribute to a lot of the TV shows at WKAR that really focused on, whether it's Wildcraft or any of those that really focus on STEM learning.
Oh, I love that story. Dr. Rob has been a part of the WKAR family for a long time with Curious Crew. Julie, how about you?
Well, I was going to say, these were staples in our house growing up. And I think about that old TV and how, we saw Sesame Street, Mr. Red, all those staples growing up, but then how they evolved and how they really become current and reaching our current kids and our generation now. And it's just awesome to see that in action. So my own children have watched PBS Kids. It's a trusted source. When YouTube comes on, I don't think there's anything worse for parents when we see the scrolling and whatnot. And so I love that we can show programs at any age for our kids. And also that I know we can share that with the children and families at work and see them light up, and the programming is connecting with them and being an educational resource as well. And then the other thing is the books. The books are amazing. I see that every day in action. We have the book kits at work, and so I see the kids light up when they get their bag, and it's meant for their age group. And I think that's really important that you're connecting with them that way too.
Yeah, the books are so, I always love going out and watching Robin and her team when they're doing the books, because you've got this table of books, and they're all free. And Robin's there saying, come on, it's free. You can take 2 books. And no one believes her first. They approach the table very slowly, and they'll pick up a book, and she'll say, yeah, you can take it. And then when they realize that, you see their face light up. They'll look at their parents, see, there are free things in this world. All right, that goes fast. We're coming to the end of our time here. I want to thank all of you for your time. It's really wonderful to hear about how partnerships in the community have worked for you. They've certainly worked for WKAR. Julie, Carolyn, Michaela, thank you so much for being here. But please join me in giving them a round of applause.
On May 1st, President Trump signed an executive order directing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's Board of Directors to cease federal funding for NPR and PBS. The executive order, like many that have been signed by the president, could be challenged in court, and federal funding for NPR and PBS is appropriated by Congress.
If we lose our federal funding, it would severely compromise our service.
This is not a normal budget process, and it's not politics as usual. This is a real threat, and we are still determining what the full impact will be.
WKAR receives about 16% of our operating budget from support provided by the federal government, and it is critical to our ability to continue supporting our community in the ways that you have come to expect.
Provide WKAR with stability in a time of uncertainty surrounding federal funding by becoming a monthly sustaining donor or by upgrading your current monthly gift.
Over the last few weeks, we've heard from many of you wondering what you can do to help preserve the federal funding that is so vital to stations like WKAR.
Here's what you can do. Reach out to your members of Congress by phone, email, or letter. You can find Congress member contact information at protectmypublicmedia.org or with the 5 Calls app.
Follow your members of Congress on social media, where you can tell them what WKR means to Mid-Michigan and encourage them to support PBS and NPR. And follow WKR on social media too.
Encourage your friends and family members to join the movement to protect the only source of news and information that reaches nearly 99% of the U.S. population with free programming and services.
Share your WKAR story. As we make our case for public media, we know the voices that matter most are not ours, but yours. Go to WKAR.org/value and record a video or voice message and share your story about why you believe in and support public media. We'll add your voice to conversations we are having with decision makers in Washington.
If we lose our federal funding, it would severely compromise our service. We need your help now so we can keep serving you no matter what happens to our federal funding.
If you have never donated to WKAR before or donate annually, consider becoming a new monthly sustaining donor. If you are a current sustainer, consider increasing your monthly contribution.
Sustainers provide stability during this turbulent time for public media in the form of monthly revenue we can count on.
If you can't become a sustainer or increase your current monthly donation, that's okay. Please consider a one-time gift. Everything helps right now.
Let your voice be heard in support of WKAR and all public media.
Your voices and your actions matter. Show your support for WKAR today and help ensure public media stays available for everyone in the future.
All right, now it's time for Q&A. If you have not submitted questions yet, you still can. Feel free to use the QR code. All of our panelists will be available for questions. And for those of you online, watching online, feel free to submit your questions in the chat. So, Sean's asked a lot of questions tonight, but hasn't had a lot of questions asked of him. So as people are putting questions in the chat, I want to start with you. Can you give us a little bit of the lay of the land? Where are we? What's happening?
I want to say at the outset that Brant asked 2 questions. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. And again, I really appreciate all of you being here. Just to give you a sense of sort of where we are with regards to federal funding, you may recall that a few weeks ago, we got word that there was a rescissions package that was being put together to be forwarded to Congress. That rescissions package was designed to strip out funding for 3 programs: USAID, USIP, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Now, the reason that was so surprising is because the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is already a part of the continuing resolution that was passed back, I believe, on March 16th. So it's already in law. So it was really unusual that we would see a package go to Congress saying, hey, we know there's a law, but we want you to reach into that law. We want you to strip these things out so that public media does not have funding. So we were all anticipating that. We were preparing for the possibility that might happen. What we were doing at WKAR and at local stations all across the country is we were trying to mobilize our community and have people raise their voices to be heard, to send a strong message to Congress that we did not want them to go back into the continuing resolution and strip funding out. And this has been happening all over the country. And I believe that we were making some real progress. Last week, I was at the Poynter Institute, and I just happened to check my computer one last time, and I keep going onto the Federal Register just to see what's going on. And Sure enough, there was an executive order that sought to, that basically said that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is prohibited from providing any additional funding to NPR and PBS. Now, I will tell you that I said at the outset that whether that executive order stands or not is unclear. I will tell you the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has been very clear that they do not believe that the White House has the authority to strip away funding to CPB. It's a third-party, non-governmental agency, and Congress allots funds. But we don't know at this point what will happen. The really interesting thing is that the rescissions package has not gone away. The rescissions package will still go to Congress, and members of Congress will still have the opportunity to make a decision as to whether they go back and strip that funding out. I'll just be really candid with you and give you sort of Turner's perspective on this. You all and the team here at WKAR and people all across the country who were raising their voices about public media, I believe that in the weeks leading up to the executive order, it was starting to make a difference. Members of Congress were starting to signal that they might not be comfortable with getting rid of public media. And I think that if that's what the administration wanted to do, then the administration needed to step in and do something. And so I believe that's why we had the executive order, and maybe it's an attempt to send a message to members of Congress. But either way, we recognize that the threats are real, and whether it's through the executive order or whether it's through the rescissions package or whether it's through one of the dozen bills that members of Congress have put forward to zero out funding for NPR and PBS, the threat is real and it's significant. So that's why we wanted to bring you all together tonight to talk about that and just to make sure that you are aware.
Thank you very much. I think that's important context to have. And speaking of, things that community members can do, we have a question here from the audience that I'd like to start with you, Mel, with this question, and then Sean, if you'd like to comment as well. I have donated to 3 different NPR stations. I'd like to make an additional donation. At this point, would it be better just to donate to NPR directly to help them with their lawsuit?
First, whoever made that, thank you. First off, for supporting all of us. I think that WKAR and local stations are the backbone of what the public media stations and NPR and PBS, we're the ones who are here on the ground. So I would say support both, but also know that what we're trying to do here is for your neighbors and for your community. So I would always have a plug for WKAR, but we are all in this together. So I would say supporting both of us or all 3 of us makes us stronger, but we are the reflection of you here. So one-on-one, if you want to talk to me later, I would love to have a conversation. But I would say that this is something that we're all in together. If you're interested and have more of an affinity, it's not my job to convince you. It's my job to build a case for public media and for WKAR and join us that way. So
I've known Mel for a while, and I'll tell you that what Mel is saying is no.
He's my translator.
So NPR gets about 1% of CPB fund. About 1% of their funding comes from CPB, and NPR is the reason that a donation to the local station matters is because what we try to do at the local level is to bring you NPR and PBS programming and to take those national level stories, and our reporters, our team, they look at how those stories impact us on a local level. And so when you're listening to All Things Considered, Morning Edition, and you hear that local that local twist on what's happening at the national level, that is because your donations have allowed us to purchase to be NPR member stations, to purchase that programming so that we can have those levels of understanding. So when the donation comes to us, that's what it does. If it goes directly to NPR, it doesn't help our ability to bring you NPR programming. So the answer to the question is no.
I what is that? Phone a friend, right?
Thank you both. I appreciate it. I want to pivot to some of the emergency alerting. And Sean, I'm going to ask you this one here. It's kind of a 2-parter, so I'm going to try and ask them both. So with the WARN system being backed by FEMA, what do you think the impact would be if the administration defunds FEMA, as they have publicly stated? And additionally, if FEMA is dismantled, what does WKAR's backup become? Do we even know?
Yeah, I think that the most likely scenario, and Brant may have some thoughts on this too, is that you will see our emergency alerting system basically be taken over by the commercial sector. And I'm very concerned about that, and I think we should all be concerned about that because the commercial sector does not exist to do nonprofit sort of work for the community. It exists to make a profit. And there are organizations out there that have come forward and said that, you know, based on our nationwide network, we could take over the emergency alerting system. But, you know, I was in Washington, D.C. during 9/11, and I will tell you, I had a cell phone in my hand, and it was nothing more than a rock for about 4 days because the system was overwhelmed. And prior to that, you know, there was all this talk about how strong the system was and how capable it was, but it simply did not work. And the problem with the emergency alerting, if we do have a real national disaster, a national issue, we really won't know how well that system works until something like that happens. Right now, the PRSS, the Public Radio Satellite System, that is the backbone of our emergency alerting system, can reach 99.7% of Americans. There's absolutely nothing that exists in the commercial world that can do that. Now they'll use a bunch of different means, but right now we've got that system, and I think if FEMA goes away, I think if public media, if CPB funding goes away, then it's up to the commercial sector.
Thank you. There is a quick answer here, so I'm just going to answer this one. For emailing my representative, what percent of the federal budget is CPB funding? It is 1/100th of 1%. 1/100th of 1% of the federal budget goes to CPB.
And in real dollars, $1.60 per person per year.
It's a great bang for your buck.
Really is.
Okay, here's one. I will start, but I would love to have Robin answer this as well. If you want to head up this way, Robin, while I'm starting. What impact have the other cuts the administration has done to educational institutions had on WKAR? So there's a couple things I was going to start with here. First, I know this references educational institutions, but we heard this week with the executive order that funding for Ready to Learn is completely ceased. And I think maybe Robin can share a little bit more about that. But I also want to just say, when you talk about the educational institutions in communities, I think, and of course, Robin will share more, that one of the benefits of having local stations here is that we are the bridge between educators and families. So even if there's cuts to educational institutions, that makes us more important than ever before.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in being that bridge, we really are like a gap filler for many of our children and many of our families. They just don't have the resources to be able to give the high quality school readiness supports to their children that they might need for a variety of reasons. We're human. And so just today, we were on a call with PBS Kids, and they informed all stations to make sure they stopped spending any money that was connected to Ready to Learn, and that many of the programs that were already in queue to be developed, high quality educational programming that supports our 60% of children who are ages 3 and 4 who cannot access preschool education. Many of those programs will not move forward with production, and some programs who still needed production or were in queue to be produced more episodes will stop playing as well. Any funding that goes toward some of the Ready to Learn programming that we push out into community engagements when we bring to our child and family services program, any program connected to perhaps Wildcrats or maybe connected to some of our learning engagement programs connected to other programming. Many stations who receive Ready to Learn have been told to stop providing those services. And then across our network, we have partners such as Head Start, who is experiencing cutbacks tremendously. Many of their offices have been closed, and we support them tremendously. We provide them with those reading kits as well, and we provide a lot of supports and learning engagement opportunities for their families also. And so we see a ripple effect throughout our educational system when that CPB Ready to Learn funding has been cut.
Yeah. And I think that one of the important things to know about the education work is that I won't mention any names, but I've talked to members of Congress about the education work here. And I will tell all of you that as you reach out to members of Congress, if you're inclined to do that, education is one of those things that really helps them see and understand. When I talk about the fact that we engage with parents and we engage with teachers and superintendents and principals, and we find out what's right for our community, not the community in Ohio or any place else. We find out what's right for our community, and then that's what Robin and her team and the rest of the folks here, that's what they focus on. And it's the federal funding that allows us to do that. And I think that if you don't want to talk about NPR or PBS, that's okay. Talk about those things that happen right here in our community that have nothing to do with our affiliation to those.
And can I just add, when we talk about that, we can talk about our literacy scores. So about 60% of our third graders in Michigan are 2 grade levels behind. They are not proficient. So when people ask us, why do you give away books at every event? We know that access to fun, engaging children's books at our libraries, at our schools, and in our homes can make a tremendous impact in decreasing that in lack of proficiency for our students, and that's also foster a community of readers, and that's what our aim is. And so we feel like we impact our education ecosystem in many, many ways, but we need funding to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Robin. Well, I just want to say one other thing. That 60% is spread across rural communities and urban communities. Someone said to me, well, that's probably Detroit. I looked at the data. It's not. It's spread all across Michigan. Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Brant, I'm going to go to you now. Can you explain more about why WKAR is the primary emergency alert station for the state? Where does it get that designation?
It's a little complicated. It's actually primarily from the FCC and FEMA. And when we're talking about EAS, just to be really clear, that's on the radio side for the FM. So we get that designation. But what that means, in essence, is while we're primary, right, we're a repeater for other stations and so forth. But when it comes to emergency alert, the one thing that I want to say, just because we're primary doesn't mean that it's only us, right? It's all about backups. And when we're talking about emergencies, right, you do not want to have a single point of failure. And so as a station, right, that's a very important designation that we don't carry lightly. And it comes back to we have to put in infrastructure and so forth and have to maintain these systems. So it's really critical. While we are the primary, we're not the only one. And we take that, though, that responsibility is, again, it's for the community to make sure those alerts. One of the things that I'm going to piggyback and kind of take this question into a little bit of different. In 2006 is when the WARN system was put in. And while WARN was written from Congress and so forth, it's a volunteer participation. Who stepped up? Public media in that regard. And so that piggybacks what Sean was talking about with FEMA and so forth. And even what I said much earlier, right, is public media is here because we're going to do what is right for the community, not because it's profitable. And it does take infrastructure, it does take maintenance and so forth, but we do it because we're here to serve the communities. And that is something that we take very seriously here.
Thank you. We have so many good questions and probably not time to get to them all, so I apologize in advance, but I'm going to turn a tough one on you. Had to know there was going to be some tough ones. When are institutions like PBS and WKAR going to start actively pushing against the assault on our Constitution and the rule of law?
You said tough. You didn't say impossible. Jeez. I have this belief that I can bang on the window and say, what you're doing is wrong and you should do something different. And it's very clear what my message is if I do that. But I can also do the work that sends a clear message that we have a set of values and beliefs that are fundamental to who we are as who we are as Americans, who we are as a nation. And I think that you're probably never going to get to a point where you're going to see public media, you're going to see WKAR taking a firm stance and shouting from the mountaintops that this is the way it should be. And the reason that you're probably never going to see that is because we believe that, look, if we work very hard to help educate children, we work very hard to help people stay informed, to inspire people, to give people the opportunity to see their world through a different lens. That work, and I hate to say it, it's not a cliche, but that work really speaks for itself. And what we want it to do is be a community station where what we're doing right now is saying to all of you, if you believe that what we do makes this community, this country a better place, then we're going to ask you to raise your voices in support of us. One of the things that we know, and I said this in many of the communiques I sent out, is that members of Congress, they expect me to come to their office and bang on the door and say, you need to support us and here's why. But my voice doesn't matter nearly as much as your voice does. So I believe that what we do is we do the work that you value. We bring that to this community, and then we ask you to raise your voices and to tell members of Congress, to tell people in this community that it's something that you want to keep. Did I sidestep that well enough? No.
Thank you, Sean. This next one, we can maybe tag team a little bit, but I'm happy to start with you. Can you explain if programs will be cut on TV and radio if federal funding goes away?
We've been planning for the possibility that federal funding would go away for quite some time. And I'll just give you a little inside baseball. We sat down with these leaders here. Right? We all sat down together and we said, look, let's look at all the things that we do in this community, from events here at the station to being out in the community to all of our programming to radio. Let's look at everything. And we asked ourselves, if federal funding is cut, do we look at how we reduce in each of those areas and sort of water things down? That's one approach. Or do we prioritize the things that we do and say we're going to focus on these things that are here at the top, and these things are things that we may have to put aside for now. I'll tell you that we decided that the prioritizing was the approach that we would take, because we want to make sure that the things that we do, we continue to be good at and that we get even better at doing. Now, direct to the question, does that mean that programming will go away? I will tell you that it absolutely will have an impact on local programming. The federal funding that we get allows for things to happen in these studios. It doesn't mean that it will all go away. I've been very fiscally conservative and trying to make sure that we have reserves here to continue to do work. But it does mean that some of the capacity, 16% of my budget will just be gone overnight. So some of the capacity to do that work will go away, and some of that work will go away. I will say a couple of things that just are to assuage some people up. One of the most important shows that I purchase every year is Lawrence Welk. I want to declare here today that Lawrence Welk is not going anywhere. All right. But we are going to look at what really matters in terms of programming in this community, and we're going to do everything we can to maintain as much of it as we can. But there will be an impact.
I think that I might have time to squeeze in 2 more questions here, and I'm going to probably be the one to answer them. So sorry, feel free to jump in, everyone. But apologies if we aren't making it to your question, because there's some really good ones in here, but we'll stick around afterwards if you want to pop up and talk to us. So somebody says, as a parent of WKAR and PBS, of a WKAR child who's an active part of your programming like Curious Crew, and also part of another local community nonprofit, All of the Above Hip Hop Academy, that relationship, that connection led to WKAR filming a documentary on All of the Above, which I believe was part of Beyond the Score. Do you have, or is there a preference between strategic and organic community relationship building? We want both, is what I would say to that. I think that in some ways, one of the biggest struggles we've had is getting in front of more people, because you all know social media algorithms, they do what they're going to do, and they don't necessarily put you in front of new people. So if there are strategic things we can do to make new connections, or you all, if you have connections you think we should make, I think it's important that we take those active steps. But of course, we love the organic. So, for example, we're going to be out at East Lansing Art Festival coming up in a weekend or so, and try to meet as many people as we can there and foster organic relationships that way. So anything, really, we're open to feedback and information and ideas and partnerships and everything as we move forward from any angle. Anything anybody wants to add?
Oh, I just would like to.
Oh, yeah.
Our community partners, they were intentional, right? We always want to have our best friends with us or our best neighbors with us. I just want to thank the community panel, because those were strategic but started organically with conversations. I think Julie Thomasma and I had a cup of coffee and said, okay, look, there's something outside the box. I know you all are doing this big project. What does it look like? Sean and Ashley come into that, like, how can we do this? And it was an organic conversation. Whereas when I came in, I just celebrated my 7-year here yesterday. So 22 years on campus, but not knowing Carolyn Bloodworth when I came in, and her just saying, well, we're always going to be here for WKAR. And I'm like, this is established, but what else can we do? How can we figure out there's a strategic partnership, but there's always an organic conversation. So I'm very fortunate, as you can see, I get to talk about all these great people and their work and inspire people to give. I think it was Susie Elkins was like, it's not your job to convince someone to give. The work speaks for itself. And Sean Turner, my new boss, current boss, says the same thing. And that is great, because as a Lansing kid, my parents and my brother are here tonight supporting this. I grew up on WKAR. So now that I can talk about it and fundraise on its behalf, that's personal. It's organic, strategic, and that's why I'm here.
Absolutely. I'm going to get the hook, but I want to answer this last question here. They put this in red. They said, stop, Ashley, stop talking. But this one's important. What can you do? You saw in the video right before this panel a lot of the things that you can do. There's a lot you can do and grab here today when we're done here. You can record your story, your testimonial. You can grab resources like a digital advocacy toolkit. You can grab, sample letters that you can write to your congresspeople, all out there. So locate folks with the WKAR name badge, take your picture with WKAR, the sign, post them on social media, and just make your voice heard.
So as we wrap up tonight, I just want to say that it's a Tuesday night, and I imagine that all of you have other places that you could be, but you're here learning about WKAR, learning about public media, and you're here because you want to support what we do. And I just want to say to all of you, on behalf of myself and the entire team here at WKAR, we sincerely appreciate you being here tonight. As I said before, your voices matter. And it heartens all of us to see all of you here and to know that we can count on you to help keep WKAR strong and to help keep us serving this community. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate you, and have a good evening. Thank you. All right. And as I said, we'll be here if you want to talk.